ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الحدي حدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله على نعمة الإسلام وكفى بها نعمة. There's a very well-known hadith that many of you are probably familiar with. It's known as Hadith Jibreel, in which the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is said to have been approached by a man who comes to him in complete white clothing, with black hair, seemingly with water, and comes right to the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba. This is narrated by Ibn Umar, and the Sahaba say that they didn't notice any trace of travel on him. And he comes and sits right next to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, knee to knee, and some say he places his hands on his own knees, some say on the knees of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and he asks him, Ya Rasulullah, akhbirni an al-Islam. O Messenger of God, inform me about Islam. And the Sahaba were very surprised at this guy, coming out of nowhere, asking about, telling the Prophet to inform him. So the Prophet tells him about Islam. And in this hadith, it's a very, I believe it's the first hadith in Imam Nawawi's Arba'in Nawawi, his 40 collection of hadith that Imam Nawawi collects. And in this hadith, it's well known that the basic precepts of Islam is established. The basic fundamentals of Islam are established in this hadith. We find out about Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. And so he comes and he asks the Prophet ﷺ, tell me about Islam, and he informs him. And he says, Sadaqta, you have spoken the truth. And then he tells him, inform me about Iman. And again, he tells him, and he says, Sadaqta. And here the Sahaba are very surprised that here is this random, this person who they don't know, never seen him before, coming, asking a question, and when he responds, he says, you've spoken the truth. So he asks about Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. And then he asks a very interesting question after that. He says, Mata Sa'a, when is the hour? When is the hour? And the Prophet ﷺ responds that the one being asked does not know any more than the one who is asking. So he then asks, what are the signs of the hour? And then the Prophet ﷺ goes on to answer the question. And this is something that the Quran goes on to elaborate on as well. And it's very interesting. It's a similar question that we've seen since the beginning of time and that you still have today. That the Quran answers questions that people ask, from all time. I've personally experienced when people ask you, in the Quran it says, وَيَقُولُونَ مَتَى هَذَا الْوَعْدُ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. When is the hour if what you're saying is really true? Have you ever had somebody ask you, if this judgment day is real, then when is it? You guys are so certain that it's going to happen, when is it? And we say, Allahu A'lam. We have no idea when the hour comes, but what we've been told are the signs. And so this is very interesting because in this hadith, the basic fundamentals are set down for the Muslims. And so therefore, each Muslim should know, we should know these basic things. What is Islam? We have the 5 pillars. What is Iman? We're giving the 6 articles of faith. And in those 6 articles, we're told about Judgment Day. So Judgment Day is one of the articles of belief that we have to believe in. But we don't, when is the Judgment Day come? So then we're told about Ihsan, and then finally about the signs of the hour. And then when Jibreel leaves, Umar radiallahu anhu says that a few days or sometime later he asks, the Prophet asked him, he said, did you know who that man was? And he said, you know, Allah, His Messenger know best. He says, that was Jibreel coming to inform you about your religion. So in this hadith, Jibreel informs us about the basics of our religion, and part of those basics are knowing the signs of the Day of Judgment. Knowing the signs of the Day of Judgment. And you know, nowadays we seem to know, most people know the 5 pillars, but we don't seem to be as acquainted with the signs as we should be as Muslims. And so, in this specific hadith, the Prophet ﷺ gives 2 specific signs. He says, number 1, that the maid servant will give birth to the how does it go? The maid servant will give birth to the mother. And this hadith is interpreted in 2 ways. That one, they say that, you know, perhaps this shows that the societal structure will be flipping around. But the more dominant opinion is that it shows that towards the end of times that children will no longer have respect for their parents. That the child will treat the parent as if they're the one in charge. And we see this is widely prevalent in our communities, if not in all communities. That there's absolutely no respect between the child and the parent. It's completely lost. Number 2, the second thing he says is that the naked and the barefooted Bedouin will be competing with one another in building the highest of towers. People of the desert will start to compete with each other to see who can build the highest of towers. And again, we see this today, right? In Dubai, in Mecca, people who just, you know, decades ago were people of the desert living in tents. And now, you know, you have the highest towers in places like Dubai. That not even 100 years ago was a barren desert, absolutely nothing. So these are the signs that are being shown right in our face. So these are the 2 signs that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in this specific hadith. But in other hadith, and in a narration by Imam Ali, he once was with some Sahaba Tabi'in, and he tells them that, take advantage of me while I am here with you for the breath of knowledge that I have, and you know, take advantage of me before I leave you. This is Imam Ali telling his companions. And so one guy smartly asks him, he says, tell us of the signs of the hour. Out of everything he could have asked, he tells him, tell us of the signs of the hour, asking Imam Ali. And so Imam Ali tells him, sit down and I will inform you, for this is a very serious matter, and listen closely. So this is Imam Ali advising his companions. And so he tells them of many different signs, amongst which are, and it's, you know, the reason it's important to mention these is that once I begin to mention a few of these, you'll see how widely prevalent these are. And the reason we should remember ourselves about what's going on is that when you see how many of these signs are currently going on today, you have to be blind and ignorant to not think we are in the end of times. Simply blind and just turning your face the other way, because when you start to find out what's going on, there's no doubt that we are in the end of times. And you know, the Sahaba themselves, they used to expect, the Sahaba themselves used to expect to see the Masih ad-Dajjal. They were expecting to see him. And to the extent that the Prophet told him that, don't worry, he's not going to come during your time. Relax. And even if he did, I would defeat him. But they were expecting to see him. So, you know, what state are we in that we go in Friday after Friday thinking that, you know, it's just another thing, that there's no Dajjal coming? We're living in the end of times. And, you know, you see some of these signs. I mean, the signs are split up into 3 different categories. There are those that have already passed. Then there are those that will begin to occur towards the end of times, and then will begin to become more numerous and accelerate in their degree. So for example, earthquakes. Something that's been occurring and will increase towards the end of times. Secondly, they say that sacred knowledge will be removed from people's hearts. Sacred knowledge will be removed from people's hearts. And you see this today. Places that used to be the storehouses of sacred knowledge in their history are now the places that are immediately being destructed. Syria, a storehouse of knowledge. Great scholars come from Syria. And now one of the places that are immediately under, you know, attack. You see that family ties will be broken. Literacy, interestingly, becomes more widespread. Knowledge becomes removed from people's hearts. Sacred knowledge and literacy becomes more widespread. People begin to copulate in the public spaces. Copulate is honestly a fancy word for just saying sexual intercourse in the public places. And the best amongst the people will tell them, can you not at least do it somewhere else? Fornication becomes widespread. Intoxication becomes widespread. People prefer fornication to marriage. Greetings only occur between people who know each other. You only say salams to those who you know, which in our sunnah is to spread the salams to everybody. You walk to a group, you say salam to the whole circle. It doesn't matter if you know them all. So that's actually a sign. Prayer becomes lifeless. People begin to pray and they don't feel what's going on in their prayer. It's just emotions, no longer anything that's going on in the heart. Homosexuality becomes more accepted between the different sexes. A really interesting one I heard was that people begin dancing all night long. They dance all night long, right? And we see these clubs, now are being filled with people doing exactly that. And they said that they're also going to have musical instruments on their heads. Difference of opinions, there's different opinions of what that exactly might be. And a really scary one is the quick passage of time. Time seems to pass more quickly. And I think we can all testify to that. So there was those that have passed, and those are fewer. Like the death of the Prophet ﷺ itself was a sign. And then as for those that are to come, that have not come. So as for the minor ones that I just mentioned, all the minor signs have occurred, and the only thing that we are waiting for now are the 10 major signs that are supposed to occur. There are 10 major signs that once these occur, there is no doubt that the Qiyamah is right around the corner. And I'm just going to quickly go over these for us to just keep in mind. These are things that we should be remembering. Number one is that there will be there's a talk about a smoke, dukhan, that will be coming. Then we know about, these are all mentioned in the Quran and the Hadith. Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Gog and Magog. And each of these can be a topic in themselves. And there's people, you can have a whole lecture series. I was just listening to Sheikh Hamza lecture on this. He talked about 3 hours on this. So I'm just briefly informing on the topic to remind ourselves and wake ourselves up to the reality of what's going on. There's a beast that's supposed to arise from the earth. The sun will rise from the west. There will be 3 sinkings that will occur in the earth, one in the east, one in the west, and one in Arabia. There will be a fire coming from Yemen, and then the last one that's mentioned by our Prophet ﷺ is the coming of the Masih ad-Dajjal. And before I move on, I want to focus a little bit on the Masih ad-Dajjal. That a very scary hadith, and we should all think about this, that a sign of the end of times is that people will begin to forget the Dajjal and the coming of the Dajjal, and the Imams and the people at the Minbar will no longer remember them during their khutbas and the time when they're standing up here. This is a sign of the end of times. So just ask yourself, when was the last time you heard somebody actually give a khutbah or even mention the Dajjal in a khutbah or any talk of an Imam up here? This in itself is a very scary sign that it's right around the corner. But the Dajjal, there's many different interpretations on what the Dajjal is, and people, have their, speculatory theories. But, the dominant opinion is that, there is a social system that the Dajjal is creating, that is preparing for the Dajjal to come and sit on top of that system. But he will be a physical creature who's going to come. And, there's descriptions of what he looks like. And it's very important to know this, so that, they say that he will have, it'll say for the believers, you will see that he says a kafir right on his forehead. Kaf, fa, ra will be seen immediately on his forehead. He's said to have, and the Prophet ﷺ said that I have been in all of the prophets were told about the Dajjal, and they warned their people about the Dajjal. Every single prophet that came warned their people of the Dajjal. For indeed he will be the greatest fitna. He will be the greatest fitna that we have ever seen. And the Prophet ﷺ said that I have been informed of one thing that none of the other prophets have been informed about concerning the Dajjal. And that is that he will have one eye. He will have one eye. He's said to be short and stubby and extremely hairy, but he will come at a time when there will be mass sickness spread in the land. And he will have the cure to those sicknesses. And he will be coming at a time when people are struggling to keep up their faith, and he's the Masih. So he's the Masih ad-Dajjal. He is the the Antichrist. So he pretends to be the Christ, but he's not really. He's appearance versus reality. He makes things look one way, when in reality it's a totally different thing. So he tells people, when Isa told people that, leave off sin and become virtuous, work on your spiritual self. He tells people that, you can let go of sin and just, go do whatever you want. Don't worry about becoming virtuous. Go and do whatever you want. The Prophet said that when you hear the Masih al-Dajjal, run the other way. Run the other way, because even the best of believers with the strongest of faith can be subject to his falling into his traps. So this is something real that the Sahaba expected him, so we should be even more so afraid of this coming of the Dajjal and preparing ourselves for it. Now with that being said, the Dajjal is the last sign of the coming of the Judgment Day. Once the Dajjal has come, we know for a fact that the hour is right around the corner. And books have been written on what the Day of Judgment will look like and what it will be like. But I want to focus on one main aspect of it. And this relates to the Dajjal himself, the appearance versus reality factor. That how things in this life seem one way outwardly in the eye, yet in reality is a totally different thing. So in Surah Mutaffifin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says concerning the believers in the kuffar in this life, He says, وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِهِمْ يَتَغَامَزُونَ. When the disbelievers pass by the believers, they wink at each other. وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِهِمْ يَتَغَامَزُونَ وَإِذَا انْقَلَبُوا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِ. And when they return to their families, they laugh at each other. They laugh at them and say, those are the ضَالُونَ وَالضَّالُونَ. They are the misguided ones. They wink at each other when they pass by us in this life, and they laugh at us. But then it says, فَالْيَوْمَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنَ الْكُفَّارِ يَضْحَكُونَ. And on that day, the believers will be laughing at the disbelievers. So you see that in this life, you can pray at an airport or you can do something, and people, you seem like the odd one out. You seem like the one who may be doing things, people make fun of you, especially as a young person. Why are you doing this? Why do you have to put that on your head? Why do you not do what everybody else is doing? They make fun of you for standing up for certain things, right? And you start to feel weak. You start to give in. But the reality of it is that the things of this life are completely different from and we'll see the real states of people in the next life. The real states of people will be shown in that next life. That the person that you used to make fun of, and that you thought may not have had a life because he spent his time dedicated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He protected himself from the fitna. He didn't dive into what everybody else dived in. When that person on the day of Qiyamah is raised up before everybody else, and the one who indulged in everything will be debased in that life. On that day, all the veils will be lifted. Everybody's true reality will be shown. Because we can hide things in this life. But on that day, everything will be shown. And it says in many of the surahs, it talks about how on that day, that the people you are closest to in this life, you will be running away from in that life. Look at these contrasts. The people, your mother and your father and your closest friends. Think of the closest people to your heart. Who would you, if you could spend a day with anybody, think of that person. On that day, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, when we're all gathered together, you and your mother will run away from each other. You and your father will run away from each other. Even the one who loves you most in this life cannot do anything for you on that day. Everybody is running away from each other. And then, all of us are gathered together. We are brought before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So first, we have to wake up to the signs around us. That the day is near. We have to wake up to what's going on. Then, what are we preparing for? We must think of what the day will be like. And then what do we want our account to be like? On that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they said there's 3 groups on that day. 3 groups on that day. There's the Ashab al-Yameen, Ashab al-Shimal, and the Muqarrabun. That's it, no in-betweens. You're either of the right side, or you're of the left side, or you're of the elect. People have 3 choices. There's no in-between. There's no, I'm going to do some good someday, and then you're either one side or the other. And on that day, our books will be given to us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give our books in our right hand. On that day, the books will be given to us, and our books will be played in front of all of mankind. We will be gathered together in front of humanity. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge us, each and every single one of us. But this judgment will take place in front of all of humanity, from Adam to the last human being. And this is why we say, in the end of Surah Al-Imran, there's a dua, a very powerful dua, in which Allah teaches us. He says, رَبَّنَا فَاغْفِرْ لَنَا ذُنُوبَنَا وَكَفِّرْ عَنَّا سَيِّئَاتِنَا Ya Allah, please forgive us of our sins and cover up our bad deeds. Cover them up. وَكَفِّرْ عَنَّا سَيِّئَاتِنَا وَتَوَفَّنَا مَعَ الْأَبْرَارِ, and let us die with the righteous. Forgive us our bad deeds, cover up all the bad deeds we've done, and then let us die with the righteous. رَبَّنَا وَآتِنَا مَا وَعَدْتَنَا عَلَى رُسُلِكَ وَلَا تُخْزِنَا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Ya Allah, give us what you have promised your messengers, and do not humiliate us. Do not abase us on the day of judgment. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to truly show what each of us did from the moment of our birth to the moment our breath was taken from us, we would be in utter humiliation. We would be in utter humiliation for the things that we've done, that we know we've done, that we would be ashamed if anybody else knew about. So we pray to Allah that He doesn't embarrass us on that day, that He gives us our record in our right hand, that He covers the bad deeds that we have done, and He lets us die with the righteous. And that book that's going to be given to us in Surah Al-Kahf that we're recommended to read every single Friday, it talks about that book, and it says that the mushrikeen, the kafirin, I believe it is, they say about this book that what an amazing book, that it doesn't leave anything out. Nothing big, nothing small. It records every little thing in the book. Every little thing is recorded in that book, and it's hadira. Shaykh Hamza, translates that as like HD television. It'll be right in your face, and you'll see every single thing that you've done. Every single thing will be in front of you and in front of all mankind. So may Allah protect us from the abasement and humiliation on that day. May He hand us our books in our right hand. And we stand up in prayer every single day, 5 times a day, and we say, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, the Master of the Day of Judgment. Every single time we stand up, we say, Maliki Yawmiddin. We're saying it with our tongues. How often are we remembering with our hearts? How often are we remembering that we are actually standing before the Creator? And when you think about the way we stand in prayer, it's very similar to what the actual judgment and reckoning may be like. Where we actually stand humbly before our Creator, with our hands down at our chest. And we keep our heads down low. And it's as if we're standing before our Creator in our prayer every single time. And we say, Maliki Yawmiddin, the Master of the Day of Judgment. But how do we feel that in our heart? How is it that we can stand before our Creator every single day and tell Him the Master of that day and do things that would humiliate us on that day? And that's why we say, Ihdina, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. You we worship, you we ask for help, and you will guide us to the straight path, because we are nothing on our own. We are weak and we can never make it, and we will be humiliated on that day without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. Finally, we see these signs around us, and we reflect on it, and we realize that the time is near. We think ahead to what that day will be like and what we want our account to look like. And then it's a time for action, and then we're supposed to act. So it's a 3-step process. Think and reflect and realize what time it is. Look at your clock. Notice that the hour is near. Look ahead and see what you want your account to look like on that day, and then come back to the present and what can you do now. And one of the main reasons that I really felt this topic was necessary was that, as many of us know, according to some miscalculated and ignorant calculations, the world was apparently supposed to end last week. But interestingly, the people who thought that world was going to end, who had made those calculations, were truly preparing to leave this world. There were people who actually thought and were fearful for the day of judgment. They thought the day was going to come last Friday. And I just find it ironic that as Muslims, we can go from week to week, and those people who felt that fear that one day is how we should be feeling every single Friday. Every single Friday we should be feeling like those people who thought 2012, 21, whatever, was the last day. The way they felt that one day is how we should feel every single week. Because we are told, and we have been given conviction from our prophets and Allah, that the day will come on a Friday. We don't know when it comes, but it will come on a Friday. And ironically, Friday is the day that we go out. Friday is the day of partying. Friday is the day to be heedless. Yet on the contrary, it's the day that should have the most reflection. It's the day that should be the most feared, because it could be this day. Today could be the day that the Dajjal comes. And lastly, there's a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and when he was going up to the Isra and Mi'raj, that he told the Sahaba how can I possibly relax and enjoy this world when I've seen the angel Israfil standing with his feet like this, the horn in his hand, and just puffing. He's puffed and he's just waiting for Allah to give the command so he can blow. And the judgment starts. The angel Israfil is waiting. His feet are like this, he's holding the horn, and he's puffed, he's taking the breath. He's gone and he's just waiting for Allah's command to go. He says, how can I possibly relax and enjoy this life when I know that hour can come on at any moment? May Allah give us yaqeen in the next life. And may He give us yaqeen in the hour. And give us the best of accounts and give it our book in our right hand and save us from humiliation and abasement on that day, when none will be saved except for whomsoever He has mercy on. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. Now that we have the mental framework, that this is the state of mind that we should be in, that we can expect the hour at any moment, that we are people who are living every moment as if it's our last, that whatever action we are caught in, that we would be happy to die in. Once we have that framework in, now where do we go from there? Right? So we've looked in the past, what has happened. We see the signs in front of us today. We know that the hour is near. We look ahead and we know what our account to be like. Now what do we do right now? And there's our Prophet ﷺ, Rahmat lil Alameen, he is a mercy to the world, and he has given us every single bit of guidance that we need. And he says ﷺ to a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked him, Ya Rasulullah, mata sa'a, when is the hour? He asked our Prophet. Our Prophet responds to him that no one knows at the time. He asked the Prophet, when is the hour? He asks him in a reverse. He says, Ma a'dadta laha, what have you prepared for it? And the man says that I have not prepared much for it in terms of fasting or praying or zakah or sadaqah, but وَلَكِنِّي أُحِبُّ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولُهُ, I love Allah and His Messenger. And he says, أَنْتَ مَعْ مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ, you are with whomsoever you love. So as we're moving forward for how we want to carry out this mind frame that we have, that the fundamental base that we have to have is love. We have to have our intention straight and love for the Prophet ﷺ and love for Allah. Now with that, we go ahead to two other advices of how to actually act. And in a hadith mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ, in which he says that if the hour comes upon any one of you, and in your hand is a plant, a seed of a plant, then plant it. Then if the hour comes in your hand at that time of the hour is a seed, plant it at that time. Meaning we are people of action. It doesn't matter what the time we act. Muslims are people of iman and a'mal, of belief and action. So we have the love, but the love isn't enough. We have to act upon it. But if you don't have the love, the action doesn't matter. So both are necessary. You can't just suffice with the love, but you can't act without love. So he says, if the hour comes upon you and you have it in your hand, plant it. Okay, but how do we plant? What's the real meaning of this plant? The seed of ours is Islam, but how do we plant this seed? There's a very comprehensive hadith that's narrated by Mu'adh ibn Jabal, in which the Prophet ﷺ gives him some advice and he tells him, very comprehensive, Ittaqullah. Ittaqullah, be conscious of God. Ittaqullah wa atbi' as-sayyi'ata al-hasanata tamhuha. Be conscious of God and then follow a bad deed with a good deed. So our main purpose in this life is to have taqwa of Allah, to be conscious of Allah. But we are human beings and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that we will slip up. Nobody's perfect. But when you slip up, immediately follow your bad deed with a good deed. Because the bad deed erases the good deed. No, the good deed erases the bad deed. So immediately when you give in to the bad, do not get down on yourself. Because that's just another trick and the ploy of the shaitan. Do not get down on yourself. As soon as you give in, you go and you erase the bad deed with a good deed. Again, people of a'mal, you act. And then the last advice that he gives, ittaqullah wa atbi' as-sayyi'ata al-hasanata. Have consciousness of God, beware of God, I left out a really important part. Ittaqullah haythu ma kunt. Be conscious of God wherever you are. Be conscious of God wherever you are. So the same person you are when you're in your room at private is the same person you are when you're out in public. You don't have different personalities. You are one person before Allah. اتقوا الله حيثما كنت وأتبع السيئة الحسنة تمحها وخالق الناس بخلق حسن. So be conscious of God wherever you are. Follow a bad deed with a good deed that erases it. And treat people with beautiful character. Treat people with beautiful character. And this is what our Prophet ﷺ was sent for. إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was sent to perfect beautiful character. So our job here in America, we have a heavy responsibility as Muslims. And we can't just be sitting back and just enjoying the benefits of the country and not giving and contributing what we have. Because we have much to offer. And we have a responsibility. That when you're not spreading the message to other people, Allah will hold you accountable. He will ask you what you did. Why was it when you saw someone doing bad, you didn't stand up and you didn't speak up for the just? You didn't stand up for the oppressed. You didn't teach people good adab. So we have a heavy, heavy responsibility. And the Prophet, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I have been sent to perfect good character. So therefore, in this country, we have to be the moral compass of America. We have to be the Martin Luther King of this country. Right? We have to keep this country's moral focus in play. That's our role in this country. That we have a serious role to play and a heavy responsibility, and we can't sit back. And if we do, Allah will take us to account. That if we don't step up to the level of the deen that's required from us, Allah will take us to account. It's not enough to just say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, and just live your life in comfort. This deen is about jihad and struggle fi sabilillah. This deen is about struggle and putting your life on the line. You want comfort in this life? You want to live the luxurious lifestyle and relax? That's Jannah. Don't get the roles confused. This life is the seed that we're planting that's going to flourish in the next life. In Arabic we have a saying, Man jadda wajada wa man zara'a hasada. Whomsoever is serious and strives hard will find what they're seeking. And whomsoever plants will seek the harvest of whatever they've planted. They will reap the benefits of the fruits that they've planted. So this life is a planting field. It's our farming house. We're planting the seeds. If you want to have your fun in this life, if you want to have your 24/7 partying and relaxed lifestyle, then you have your Jannah here, don't expect it in the next life. If you're ready to plant the seed and work hard, buckle down, you're ready to sweat and work hard for the Jannah that you want in the next life, then Allah has that promise for you. It's Allah, it's a transaction between the two. Allah has told us His requirements and guidelines. And then we have our responsibility as Muslims to step up to that. So after observing all these signs, it's incumbent upon all of us that we have to wake up to the reality. We have to see the signs, we have to realize that the hour can come at any moment. And lastly, I'll leave you with the saying that they say, it said that we are all asleep, and that when we die, we wake up. We're all asleep in this life, but when we die is when we truly wake up. So wake up before you wake up. Umar radiallahu anhu said, "Hasibu qabla tuhasibu." Take yourself to account before you are taken to account. Sit down and do some introspection. Is your life going the way you want it to go? Are you leading the type of lifestyle that when you see your book given to you on Qiyamah, everything that happens is something that you're pleased with? If not, it's not too late to change. But if you want to continue, don't be ashamed when you see exactly what you're doing play before your eyes on Yawm al-Qiyamah. May Allah give us the tawfiq to benefit and hear the best of Allah's speech and His Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and follow the best of it in speech and in word, inwardly and outwardly. ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة ربنا آمنا فاغفر لنا وأنت خير الراحمين ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا آمنا فاغفر لنا وأنت خير الراحمين ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وتوفنا مسلمين يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم انصر المسلمين في كل مكان. ربنا اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم انصر المسلمين في كل مكان. اللهم انصر المسلمين في أفغانستان. اللهم انصر المسلمين في فلسطين. اللهم انصر المسلمين في سوريا. اللهم انصر المسلمين في سوريا. اللهم انصر المسلمين في سوريا. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. اللهم تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.